Hi, everybody. This is Rick here. If you can hear me, just give me a few minutes to get set up. I appreciate it. Um, what happens with Zoom is it doesn't connect to the previous streams like it used to. Yeah, it looks like it generated and connected to a different stream, and that's why I'm using StreamYard on Cardano Live. So I'm going to go over possible solutions to um, if and when the Cardano chain runs into limitations on layer one. Right now, it is not an issue. It is definitely not an issue. Okay, so it did generate a new link. So I'm going to get this new link out. I'm going to get over on the other channel. I can't tell if it connected to the old one. Okay, yeah, I'll put this on the other stream. Okay, yeah. Please hop over to the new stream. So maybe it's going out on both links. I don't know. And feel free to ask me questions. I am going to. I have a PowerPoint. I made a PowerPoint to get the thoughts laid out in a nice visual manner. And I'm going to put this on Twitter real quick and I'll get started. I'll try to be brief, save you some time this afternoon. Just make sure I get the links out. There we go. Okay. And then close my extra windows so that we can see what we're looking at here. Thank you for your patience while I get set up. I think I'm going to connect my StreamYard to the Digital Fortress channel because StreamYard is fantastic, as well as Riverside FM. Okay. All right, looks good, looks good. Okay, so let me get on to the meat of the subject here. Thanks everyone for joining me over here on Digital Fortress. All right, recently you'll see some information where Sebastian and Nico suggested coming up with a fee market. It's been debated on GitHub. There's people from IOG like Duncan Coots who are involved with the discussion about making a gas fee market on Cardano. Okay, so making this gas fee market on Cardano, the point of doing that would be sometimes currently the layer one chain runs into congestion problems typically only during NFT drops. When there's multiple NFT drops on weekends, the chain will start to hit what looks like 92 to 98% load. And when the chain hits about 92% load, it's pretty much maxed out. Now, it's really not an issue right now. It is really not an issue yet, but we do have to plan for the future because it will become an issue, and we have to have a plan for when the layer one chain gets congested, because we are seeing it. All right, currently there are already options. The current options are increase the network parameters. Right now, the network parameters, the chain is only running at about 25% max global speed. This is based on a blog post I read from Kevin Hammond, who is an IOG expert. And hopefully I interpret it correctly. I do make mistakes. I'm a human. Forgive me if I make mistakes. But the current max speed, it's only running at like 25%. Even when it hits 100%, it's only at 25% of what the technology can run a global layer one on Cardano. So there's still room to increase network parameters. Charles has indicated as such, where you can increase the block size, you can increase the size per transaction, but that's not really going to help with that. You can increase the block size. Right now, the parameters are set for a block every 20 seconds. The parameters can be adjusted to where there's a block every 10 seconds, which would double the throughput of layer one. So there are still currently plenty of options on the table. And once all those options are used and the chain is running at 100% and it's running at maximum possible speed which is a lot of transactions per second. But Cardano transactions are unique. They're different than other blockchains because you have metadata on layer 1, okay? So there is no finite TPS for Cardano transactions. There's no finite TPS because every block can be composed differently. Every block can have ADA plus NFTs or ADA plus native assets or ADA plus NFTs plus native assets, any combination, and in the transaction, which then changes how many transactions will fit into the block. Okay, and it's very important to recognize, and that there is still plenty of room on layer 1, but we do have to have a plan for when layer 1 is maxed out. Now, one of the options presented was make a gas fee market like Ethereum. I do not want to go straight to that option. I think it has been proven to have failed on Ethereum because they have gas fees ranging from $50 to $300, okay? I think that's a failed indication because those gas fees are so exorbitant that the only people that want to use them are, for example, people who want to make a lot of money off of the swaps, okay, or people who want to make a lot of money off their NFTs. And again, I keep saying a lot of money, okay? They either have a lot of money or they can make a lot of money to where the gas fee becomes worth it. I think it's a failed model. So I'm going to share my screen and show you some examples and kind of present a concept. This is not a solution, okay, by engineering. This is a general concept that may lead to solutions. It's just ideas, okay? So that's important to note, is that these are ideas that may lead to a solution. I'm going to share my screen. I made a little PowerPoint to kind of capture the ideas visually. It kind of helps people grasp the concepts. Let me see. So how do I do this again? I swear I did share screens on Zoom before. Where did I do that from? Give me a moment while I do that. Okay, share screen, desktop to share. Okay, so hopefully you can see my desktop over here. Okay, all right, so I'm going to start from the beginning. Let's say we have our Cardano main chain currently, okay, shown here. And there's also a testnet running for all the chains. And what I'll try to do is I'm going to give you the general description here, and I'll also monitor chat so that if you have ideas, let me know your ideas in your chat and I can add them to these slides and the ideas will start to refine. Okay, so here's the main chain as it currently is, and it hits limitations on NFT drops, but there's still room to expand the current layer 1 of the chain, not including Hydra at layer 2, okay? It has plenty of room for more speed, and we may need more layer 1 bandwidth in the future. And I don't agree with doing gas market fees yet. We may need to. It's definitely an option, but you can do both. Now, where did I get this idea from to make more chains? So the idea here is make more chains. And where do I get this idea from? Well, there's, let's take Ethereum and Tron, for example. And sometimes, like when I want to buy ERG, I got to buy USDT and send it over to KuCoin or Gate in order to buy ERG. Okay. Then when I buy my USDT ERC20 token, I have to send this token from either Coinbase or Kraken, and then I send those tokens to KuCoin or Gate to buy the ERG. Then what happens is I get this little alert banner that says, hey, which network do you want to use, right? The Ethereum, and it'll have an alert in the banner that says the Ethereum chain is rather congested and the fees are high, or the money moves slow. Recommend using another chain. And then I select TRC20 Tron, and bam, it goes very quickly with very little fees. And off it goes. So that's where the idea comes from, is that Tron was originally like a fork of Ethereum, but they've made modifications in its proof of stake, but it's still compatible in some ways. So, and then there's some magic that goes on in the background at the exchange level, where when the user selects use the ERC20 or the TRC20, the exchange will send it using that mechanism. All right. So that's where the idea stems from, is the user gets to choose which chain do I send my my money on, my USDT or whatever your token is, and the user has options. And these chains were forked or created either adversarial or because somebody wanted to do something different. Okay, so the concept here, I'll go to the next slide, is what if you fork the Cardano chain deliberately? What if you just do it on purpose? Okay, in order to create more room on layer one and to create competing chains on purpose, instead of forking the chain because somebody is upset with the status quo, or forking the chain because somebody wants to run off in a different direction, what if you fork it on purpose? Like, do it because you need more bandwidth. Do it because you want to serve more users, right? And so here's the concept that I'm trying to present here is, so you have your Cardano main chain, and soon we will have DEXs available on Cardano and dApps, and you'll have devs building those dApps on the main chain. What if you make more layer ones? We ran out of bandwidth on one layer one. Okay, make another layer one. And that will give the original layer one competition to keep the gas fees down. It'll keep the cost of using those layer ones down instead of them becoming insane like they are on some of the chains, right? And you could do this more and more and more. You can make more, and they're not adversarial layer ones. They're cooperative yet competitive layer ones that were done intentionally, okay? And the cool thing about it, okay, so why is layer one scarce? Well, it's not intentional. Layer one is not intentionally scarce. Layer one is limited by engineering design. It's limited by the global internet. It's limited by the consensus algorithm and how fast it can replicate blocks and the tolerance of the consensus algorithm. Layer one is not intentionally limited and intentionally scarce. It's limited by engineering things, and that's why blockchains like EOS and Solana came up with solutions to achieve higher speeds at layer one. And the concept I present here might be similar to Polkadot parachains, maybe similar, but not the same. So you make another chain, all right? So how do you launch this second chain? Well, you make a Genesis block, and how do you get to this Genesis block for the second chain? Well, I don't think it's a good idea to just copy the Genesis block of the first chain, because then you just took everybody's wealth and doubled it, or you depleted the value of their coins, right? So you make a new chain that's completely compatible, and you want about the same amount of ADA on the layer one, and you want them to function in a similar manner. And again, these are just ideas. So you launch an ICO on one of those DEXs, and you, for example, it's just an example, and you create wrapped ADA that then ICOs, and it goes into the other chain. And this might be a more fair version of an ICO, because I'll give you an example. I'm a USA citizen from a regulated country, and I can't participate in ICOs unless they are on a DEX where you're not KYC'd and anyone can buy off the DEX. So to create the genesis for the new chain, launch some sort of wrapped ADA or some sort of ICO token or certificate or something on the original chain. And then when you create the genesis block for the new chain, people can buy it. You know what? That kind of renews people. People like buying something new. Like people in crypto, like, hey, look, this is new. This is cool. I want to buy something, and I want to buy in on this ICO. And maybe it's the same price as ADA to begin with, or maybe it's 50%, or maybe it's 10% of the price or something. But, you'll have a more fair ICO. It's available to everyone, and they get those tokens. And then you create a genesis block, and then the chain continues. Now you have two chains, and they have competing layer ones, and they both have the same amount of ADA, but they're different. Okay, those ADAs live in a different universe on a different layer one. It is not the same ADA. It is a different ADA. It's just the chains are compatible, right? They have compatibility. So if a developer builds on chain one, everything they built is also still usable on chain two, because the chains have similar characteristics or the same characteristics. It's just different ADA, and so on and so on. So if you need more layer 1 bandwidth, you make more and more chains, which leads us to the next slide. Let me know if you have any questions. Hello, everyone there in chat. We got Roger, Tang, Blocks and Clouds, Johann Weiss. Good to see you here, Dr. Weiss. Hello. Let's see. Magnus Red says the ETH fees aren't high because of the idea of a few markets, because the ETH as a system is inefficient and expensive. Yeah, it's kind of a combination of things. Inefficient, expensive, limited layer 1. It's the chain is often full, right? Often under heavy load. And there's a difference between proof of work chains and proof of stake chains I'll get to later, but let me kind of describe this here. And this is just an example. Let's say, we currently have a test net. It's moving towards 1.31 as an example. And it's a test. It would be a test net for all of the chains that are both cooperative and competitive. And you have the Cardano main chain on 1.30 variants. And it's running along, right? And then you launch these new chains like I showed in the previous slide using wrapped ADA or whatever, some type of token launched on a DEX. And you launch a second chain. And that second chain and that third chain, however many layer 1s you need to provide plenty of bandwidth, they could be managed by the Cardano Foundation, where IOG manages the engineering, kind of like Boeing. Boeing builds airplanes. They didn't just build one airplane. Boeing builds a lot of airplanes, kind of like IOG, right? That's the reference here. Then there's this whole airline industry, right? They don't just buy one Boeing. They buy a bunch of them, okay? And there's different airlines. So these other chains, they could be managed by the Cardano Foundation or Emergo or DC Spark or the community, anyone. Anyone could manage these other chains and say, okay, we are going to, and guess what? Project Catalyst works on all the chains. So if someone puts in a Catalyst proposal, they say, yeah, I'm going to propose this, and this work will apply to all the chains. So if you vote on the main chain and it wins, then you get more toys on chain 2, 3, and 4, and so on. Okay, that's just an example. Okay, so you have these other chains running in parallel with similar amounts of ADA on them, and they'll have staking capabilities. And when these developers, they build something, let's say chain 1, they can choose. They say, you know what, chain 1 is overloaded, and my toy or my app or my dApp that runs on layer 2, there's just not enough room on layer 1, so I'm going to build it for chain 2, but it'll still work on chain 1 and chain 3. It'll still work on the original. It'll work on the new ones. Maybe someone can make a bridge. I don't know. Just a concept. At the layer 2 level, to bridge the dApps across and say, yeah, we deploy our token on one chain, and then it's either wrapped on the other chain, or the other chain recognizes the token as valid, but somehow it has to be instantiated on the other chains. Remember, you can't cross the universe. If you want to cross the universe, you need one of these bridge kind of things that will bring the coins or tokens across. Like the ADA that lives on the main chain cannot live natively on the new chains. It just can't. It's a different universe. But you could send either wrapped ADA or a native asset. The developer could instantiate the same native asset on both chains and say my app or my dApp will interact with both chains or multiple chains. And then the users, they get an interface selection. It says, hey, which network do you want to operate on? Kind of like MetaMask or other wallets. And you can say, I want to operate on the Cardano mainnet A or Cardano mainnet B or Cardano mainnet C. And I want to interact on that one because there's less traffic and things are moving faster over on that network. You could possibly do with NFTs, where you know how you have an ERC20 converter coming out that'll convert things from an Ethereum chain to a Cardano chain. You could put a chain converter that will chain or bridge, convert or bridge. Let's say someone launched an OG NFT on the main chain a long time ago, but congestion is prohibitive. And they can say, all right, well, you can run them through a converter and it'll spit it out over on chain 2 or chain 3, or maybe can exist on all three at the same time. That's probably not the way to go, but could be. This is all conceptual. This is not engineering. this is not engineering by PowerPoint. I'm just presenting options or concepts that if a gas fee market were implemented, how would you keep those gas fees under control? And very similar to the way I said at the beginning of the video, when I send USDT from one exchange to another, I can choose which chain. Does it go on the Ethereum chain as an ERC20, or does it go on the Tron chain as a TRC20? And that's the options the users get over here. They can say, hey, which network do I want to use the apps and dApps on? Okay, all right, so let me check some questions here, and I'll go to my next slides. I have Marcel from CC Wallet and Titan. Hey, Marcel. He says, that's what the Hydra heads are for, rapid channels with the same layer 1 characteristics and security. Yes. So Marcel is an awesome dude and super smart, and he built the CC wallet. But yeah, so Hydra channels, you got layer 2, right? And so the Hydra channels will take the ADA and the participants off chain, and they can do all the interactions off chain. And when those, they have a finalization, they can bring the results back on chain. So what I'm talking about is like post Hydra, even if you're on Hydra. So even if you're on Hydra and the chain gets congested, you still have options. So this is an option. And we have Sebastian here as well. Welcome, Sebastian. Glad to see you here. I wish I could bring you in on the chat, but maybe not necessary right now. Sebastian says you would be interested in the proof of stake sidechains paper. It mostly describes how to do what you're describing. Okay, thank you, Sebastian. And maybe the idea kind of fomented there. I read some information on proof of stake sidechains, but I just can't possibly remember everything. I remember reading information about that a while ago, but I don't recall specifics. But there is a proof of stake sidechains paper. Thank you, Sebastian, for reminding of that. It's over on the IOHK research page. There is 123 research papers over there on the IOHK website, iohk.io. Thank you, Sebastian, and thank you, Marcel. And Johan has a question, correct me if I'm wrong. These considerations or possible solutions are only being thought about, assuming or speculating that scaling is not achieved. Well, no, scaling will be achieved with Hydra in getting transactions. Let's say a casino. I'll give you an example, Johan, is let's say a casino, instead of it running on the main chain, they have a Hydra channel, and all the participants that are using that casino, they generate a transaction and tokens, and they go off-chain. They operate on the Hydra head, and let's say once per hour or once per day. If the casino's really busy, maybe once per hour, it will resolve and say, okay, we're going to close out this transaction and report the results to the main chain as to whose balance belongs to who after these people got done screwing each other over in the casino, and the winner shows up with more coins. That all goes back to the main chain. That's the general idea. It's not technically specific. Or it could be a casino, it could be a bank, anything, any financial service, for example. I just use a casino for that. Yeah, these are just options, possible options to keep gas fees under control in case a gas fee market option is necessary, or to preclude the need for a gas fee market on Cardano, because we saw what happened on Ethereum, right? I can't possibly, I don't want $50 to $300 gas fees on Cardano. So these are ideas to prevent that and preclude it. Okay. Oh wait, what did I say? So management. It could be IOG managed, the baseline for all of the different chains, and then each of the chains could be managed by Cardano Foundation or Emergo, DC Spark, community, anybody. Anyone can run these alternate universes of Cardano, yet at layer 2 and maybe a layer 3 someday, the apps and the dApps are still compatible. And when a developer spends a lot of time and effort building an app or a dApp for one chain, it's still compatible with another chain, and they don't have to reinvent the wheel. They can just make more of the same wheel, right? So who would run these networks? Okay, well, we have a lot of SPOs. There are a lot of really good SPOs out there. And right now there's at least 2,000 SPOs. Although there are 3,000 pools, my kind of rough estimate, we got at least 2,000 SPOs. We have a lot of pools OG pools that have retired, those SPOs are still available, and they would earn the native ADA rewards on those other chains. And down here at the bottom, I gave an example. Like right now with K equals 500, we have enough SPOs already to run 4 different chains. We have more than enough SPOs. We have more than enough expertise. We have more than enough people to run this. We have more than enough resources. Why? Because it's proof of stake, and Cardano is extremely efficient. You could not possibly do this on other proof of stake chains that are less efficient. I mean, you could, but you're probably going to run out of either people, or you're going to start grinding into resources where it's not profitable enough for people to want to do it. That's the important part, sustainability. These chains maintain that sustainability. Okay. So we'd have more than enough SPOs. Right now we got 2,000. We have enough SPOs to run 4 networks, as long as those are rewards. Right now there's moderate SPO activity on the test net. Probably it needs more activity over there. But the test net that currently exists, the results of that test network would apply to multiple chains. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. As the test nets prove an app or a DApp or a function or a feature that's built into Cardano, it can be replicated on the other chains. Okay, so these are just ideas and concepts. I'm throwing them out there, food for thought. Questions? Let's see. Okay, no other questions. Yeah, if you have ideas, throw them out there. I'm going to use an ISP as an example. All right, now people like crypto because crypto is limited and scarce, and the value goes up. So someone who's a trader, someone who's an investor, someone who wants the value to go up, you'll have a balance where it's still limited. Like these new chains that spin up, they would still be limited to 45 billion ADA per chain, for example. Whereas with US dollar, they just print unlimited trillions all the time. They can't even make enough ink to print more dollars. They just type numbers into computers, because you can't even possibly print all the trillions of dollars that have been coming out, right? So people like the scarcity and limitations of crypto, right? But so what I'm getting at here, though, is these different chains would be like this ISP. The tier 1 ISPs would be Cardano chain A, Cardano chain B, Cardano chain C, and so on and so on. And then you would have more layers and more Hydra channels. And it's just an example that also helped me think of the idea. And I said, well, what happens when an ISP runs out of bandwidth, right? That's like our layer 1 or tier 1. What happens when they run out of bandwidth? Well, they either build more bandwidth, or another ISP comes into existence to make up for it and provide people what they want, and that is more bandwidth. Okay. So why not do that on Cardano? If layer 1 runs out of room, make more layer 1s. And then it'll be similar to this diagram. Again, it's just a concept. And then the layer 2s, and if there's eventually layer 3s, all those would follow suit. So I just used this picture of an example of how it currently works with ISPs, right? So that was just an idea or concept. All right, so my conclusions here, I kind of tried to be reasonable about it. You know, if Cardano runs out of bandwidth on layer 1, just make more layer 1 Cardano chains. You could do that in addition to or instead of a gas fee market. The reason I think this will work is with proof of work chains, it doesn't really work, because the competing proof of work chains, they can 51% attack each other, and they probably will, right? But with proof of stake, that's not the case, because the ADA that is created on the new layer 1 is a separate ADA that is also securing that separate chain. Okay, it's a separate chain, separate ADA. Now, what are the pros? Well, the pros of making more layer 1s is you're giving people more options. You're giving developers more space to build. You're giving people more room for innovation. Maybe they'll add features to chain B or chain C that chain A hadn't done, and then they'll say, hey, that's a good idea. Let's bring that over to chain A, because it didn't break chain C, right? It maintains Cardano level security, so you don't have these random non-researched proof of stake chains popping up that have crummy layer one security, right? That's just a thought. It keeps the gas fees down. Like, that's the objective, right? Keep those gas fees down. If a gas fee were to come into existence, it opens up space on layer one. Although Hydra does, no, the key thing right now, remember, as I said at the beginning of the video, there's plenty of room to increase the network parameters on layer one right now, and layer one is only running at about 25% capacity all the time. And it can actually run gracefully. Based on the article I read from Kevin Hammond, it can run with graceful degradation up to 200% of its capacity. Okay, so that's a good thing. Cardano was designed correctly. Let's make more Cardanos, right? Let's just make more chains. You could maybe get price stabilization by having price competition, or by having those other layer ones to run on. Not financial advice, just a thought, possibly. Expands the network. It would be easy to list the new chains on exchanges that already list ADA. Right? They don't have to reinvent the wheel. That wheel's already there. Copy, paste. Okay, it's a little bit harder than that, but you achieve both the abundance of having plenty of layer one space and the scarcity of limited coins per layer. So the most successful layer will have the most valuable ADA coins on it. What are some of the cons? Well, it could certainly be confusing to users. Okay, like, hey, which network should I use? Which network am I on? It would require more management with different people managing different chains, and you could run into depletion of resources where you really don't have enough SPOs to operate the chains. You're going to hit a point where people might say, hey, you know what, launching a fourth or fifth layer one chain, we just don't have enough people or resources, and then it might run into problems, right? Just pick any random problem, right? Okay, so that's the general idea. So I touched on those conclusions, and why is this a general concept? I used Stephen Covey. So Dr. Stephen Covey wrote 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and he wrote about the scarcity mentality and the abundance mentality. And I've spoken about this on my videos before. I read the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, extremely good book. And the scarcity mentality, it's covered here in the top paragraph. The term scarcity mentality, the scarcity mindset is where one feels there are limited resources to achieve our goals. It's the idea that life is a pie, and if people take too big of a piece, there won't be enough left to go around. Okay, it makes us competitive for scarce resources. It drives the primitive part of our brain to its evolutionary roots of survival. Okay, so that's why some people like scarcity in the coin itself, because it gives the coin value. But on the flip side, there's the abundance mindset. This is the growth mindset where there is enough to go around, money isn't lacking, resources aren't lacking, and food isn't lacking. Those are just examples, but those are great examples. And we're not acting in the context of the feeling of scarcity. We aren't pulled automatically towards unfulfilled needs. We don't have to act in the moment. We can take our time, save, and appreciate. Okay, so it's really, what's the difference between scarcity? Scarcity in coins is good. Scarcity of bandwidth on layer one is bad. You want plenty of room on layer one. You want to move stuff off onto layer two, onto Hydra heads and stuff like that. But if we were to ever run into the need for more layer one bandwidth, my suggestion is to explore the options of creating more layer ones, much like the example I gave in the ISP example. We need more bandwidth on the internet. The ISPs make more bandwidth, right? Or more ISPs pop up. And rather than letting chains become created adversarial or because people are discontent, you make those chains because you need more layer one bandwidth, and it will improve the user experience on the network. So that's the concept I'm trying to explain here. I hope everyone enjoyed that. It's not written in stone. It's not ready for a CIP yet. It's just ideas that go along with either implementing a gas fee market or instead of a gas fee market, implement more layer ones to keep those gas fees under control. And again, it's not needed right away on Cardano. There's plenty of room on layer one, and there's tons of room on layer two with Hydra. These are just some options as opposed to launching a gas fee market, which doesn't seem to work too well on Ethereum. The prices just get too high because of the engineering limitations of layer one. All right, so I hope you all enjoyed the video here. I will see you around the Cardano ecosystem. Why? Because we're always going for number one in all categories: research, engineering, user experience, everything, not just coin market cap, everything. Right now, the development shown on GitHub on Cardano updates is, if you check out the link to Cardano updates, you will see there's a massive amount of activity. It's not just IOG. There's community developers in there. There's developers from DC Spark and Indigo and Liquid and all these different projects. I mean, they are just banging it out. It's awesome. It's awesome. And I got a lot of faith in Cardano. I know it was built correctly. I don't know because I looked at the code. I know because I read the people and the things that they're doing. And that tells me, yes, this is being done correctly. So I'm providing some inputs here as to how I think the general overarching, what direction could we go with improving layer one performance or getting more bandwidth through layer one when needed. Not until post Hydra. I think wait until we see what Hydra does before we start looking at implementing a gas fee market or implementing multiple layer ones to support the load. All right, that's all I got for you today, and I'm going to wrap it up. Thanks everyone for dialing in to Digital Fortress here. I appreciate it. Make sure hit that like and subscribe button down below. It helps me out here at Digital Fortress. And share the video with your friends, and that always helps as well. And you can hit the bell